Today on the newscast, are Russia and Israel on a collision course over Syria as Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett prepares to meet with Vladimir Putin next week? Plus, the Iranian regime unveils what it calls its own version of Iron Dome. Get all the breaking details next. Hey folks, Erick Stakelbeck here. Welcome to the Watchman Newscast. If you missed our live stream yesterday here on the channel, you can check it out under Newscast. We went for a full hour live and I took your questions. One of the main viewer questions was, are Israel and Russia on a collision course, in particular over the situation in Syria? The answer is that is looking increasingly likely. I reported during that live stream that Israel likely, at least was accused by Iran and its allies, of carrying out airstrikes in central Syria around the city of Palmyra late Wednesday night. Now, at least 9 Iran-backed fighters were killed in these airstrikes, and Iranian targets were also hit. Israel did not claim responsibility, but the Iranian Accuses released a statement blaming Israel and vowing, quote, a very harsh response. Now, the plot thickened yesterday, Thursday, October 14th, when a Russian general who is involved in Russia's operations in Syria blamed Israel for these airstrikes. He said that 4 F-16 Israeli F-16 fighter jets were responsible. And interestingly, he also said that Syrian air defenses, and remember, Russia has talked openly about how it is helping Syria and the Assad regime to bolster its air defenses. This Russian general said that Syrian air defenses were not activated against these Israeli fighter jets because the Israeli jets used 2 civilian airliners as cover. Basically, these Syrian soldiers did not want to shoot down the civilian airliners, and according to this Russian general, the Israeli fighter jets use that as cover to carry out these airstrikes against Iranian targets. Is it true? We don't know, but 2 things to keep in mind here. Number 1, Russia accused Israel of similar actions back in September 2018. I was actually in Israel at the time this incident happened when a Russian spy plane was shot down by Syrian air defenses accidentally. Russia blamed Israel. They said that Israeli fighter jets were using this Russian spy plane as cover to evade Syrian missile defenses. That's number 1. Number 2, the fact that this Russian general is coming out pretty forcefully and pointing the finger at Israel, I believe is telling and is not a good sign. That incident in September 2018, which I mentioned, caused a major diplomatic uproar with Russia infuriated at Israel. Israel said, hey, we didn't do it. You're looking in the wrong direction. Look at Syria. Israel has not responded to these latest accusations by this Russian general. But folks, it fits a pattern, an increasing pattern of tension between Israel and Russia over Syria. We've told you many times here in the newscast why Israel is carrying out airstrikes against Iranian and Hezbollah assets inside Syria. It's real simple. Number 1, because Iran is attempting to establish a military foothold on Israel's border, on the Syria-Israel border, from which Iran can launch attacks against Israel. Basically, the Iranian regime wants to duplicate what it has in southern Lebanon, also at Israel's doorstep, in the form of Hezbollah, which it has equipped with over 150,000 rockets and missiles. So Iran wants to copy that scenario on the Israel-Syria border. That's number 1. Number 2, Iran is trying to transit advanced weapons through Syria into the hands of Hezbollah in southern Lebanon to be used against Israel. In particular, I am talking about those precision-guided missiles, or PGMs for short. Both of these Iranian goals are red lines for Israel, so you have seen Israel acting to put a stop to it and to push Iran back, and hopefully in Israel's eyes, out of Syria. Iran says we're here to stay. Israel says we won't allow that. So certainly a collision course between Israel and Iran over Syria, but increasingly, Iran's friend and ally, Russia, has been making noise about being impatient, even fed up, with Israeli operations in Syria. Remember, Israel is operating against Russia's allies, Iran and Hezbollah, and at times the Assad regime. Not only that, Israel is doing it inside Syria, where there are Russian boots on the ground. They've been there for the past 6 years now, and by the way, folks, they aren't going anywhere. So this is a black eye in some ways to Russia, you could say, as Israel is operating under Russian troops' noses in Syria and hitting Russian allies. So stay tuned. Russia has said we are going to supply Syria with more advanced missile defense systems, and all of this comes amid the backdrop of a crucial meeting next week in Sochi, the Black Sea resort town in Russia. Vladimir Putin, the Russian president, has extended an invitation to Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett. Bennett will be traveling to Russia next Friday, October 22nd, to meet with Vladimir Putin for the first time since Bennett became prime minister. Now, certainly Syria will be at the top of the list of discussion points, and also Iran. Russia wants to re-enter that, wants that Iran nuclear deal to be revived. Israel says no way, it's a disaster. So there is certainly a collision course, in a sense, over Syria and Iran when it comes to Russia and Israel. Hey, speaking of air defense, the Iranian regime, very interesting story this week. It didn't get a lot of headlines, but they conducted military drills in Iran on Tuesday and Wednesday. And during those drills, which were called Sky Defender Veliat 1400. Not sure what that means, but during these drills, Iran unveiled a new missile defense system, what it called a multi-layered missile defense system, and they are boasting basically that this is their own version, an Iranian-made domestic version of Israel's Iron Dome missile defense system. Apparently, these tests that the Iranian regime were conducting were successful, according to them at least. Some reports have suggested that this new Iranian Iron Dome is based on a South African model. But why is Iran doing this? Why are they boasting about their military capabilities? Again, we'll go to two reasons in this case as well. Number one, Iran wants to project strength. They want to give the impression to the world, and in particular the region, the Sunni Arab neighbors, but in particular Israel, that Iran is a military superpower. That's why you see Iran showing off its drone hardware that we've talked about many times here in the newscast in these various drone drills and military parades. Iran is trying to transmit a message to Israel that they are on Israel's level militarily. They're anything but that's the impression they are trying to create. So that's one reason behind the unveiling of this supposed Iranian Iron Dome. The second reason is very clear, folks. Iran wants to send a message to the world, and again to Israel in particular, that if you want to strike our nuclear weapons facilities, it's not going to be easy, and we have the capabilities to shoot down fighter jets and incoming missiles. I always like to end with some encouraging news amid all the doom and gloom. As we head into the weekend on a Friday, certainly. Number one, we know that God Almighty still sits on the throne. But number two, there is a great organization I wanted to tell you about, a way to put your faith into action. A lot of people ask here in the comments section, what can I do to make a difference in these Bible times, these prophetic times that we're living in right now? I can't think of a better organization to get involved with, to get connected to, than Mercy Ships. Hey, they are helping the needy, assisting people who are victims of humanitarian disasters in hot spots around the globe. A perfect way to volunteer and get involved. Check this out. Here's more about Mercy Ships, an organization I believe very strongly in. Take a look. I'm going to ask you for just a moment of your time to tell you about an incredible organization that's helping to make a huge difference in the world. Mercy Ships. They are the largest floating civilian hospital in the world, staffed by amazing doctors and nurses who volunteer their time to bring life-saving medical care to those who otherwise would not be able to receive treatment at all. With the launch of their largest ship, the Global Mercy, there is an urgent need for more volunteers. The best part about this is that you don't have to be a doctor or a nurse to serve. There are several positions on the ship that are always desperately needed, including cooks, cleaning teams, and more. They're not asking for your money, just your time and willingness to serve. You can help reach those in need and touch the lives of children. You can be a volunteer with Mercy Ships. It's easy to get involved. Just visit mercyships.org for more information. Folks, I don't endorse many organizations here on the Watchman Newscast, as you might have noticed. So when I do, you know I believe in them and they are rock solid. The Mercy Ships team is a dedicated group of followers of Jesus making a difference around the world. Check them out, mercyships.org. Hey, thanks so much for joining us today on the Watchman Newscast. Have a great weekend, and until next time, God bless you. And remember, never hold your peace. Hey everyone, thanks for checking out the Watchman Newscast. If you enjoyed this episode and want to see more, make sure you go ahead and hit the like button, click subscribe, and tap the bell icon to turn on notifications for new Watchman Newscast episodes every weekday.